Right, who's first? Right, there's a gentleman in the middle of that row, Bill, with the black crew neck on. And just so that we all know, if you could just say your name and if you represent any organisation, please say which it is so that everybody knows where you might be coming from.
I'm Patrick Morgan. I'm a member of the Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign. On behalf of the organisation, I would like first of all to welcome Jeremy back to Belfast. We were glad to have him 2 years ago as a speaker at Palestine Day, which will be on again tomorrow. My question to the panel, and to everyone on the panel, is that given the continuing slaughter of the people in Palestine, I mean, with over 2,000 people killed last summer, over 500 of those were children. Last week, with an 18-month-old baby who was burned to death by an Israeli settler. There's been a total destruction of the infrastructure. Thousands of people are still displaced from their homes.
Yeah, I think we know the background. You have a question?
The question is, can the panel give hope to the people of Palestine by supporting the movement for boycott, divestment and sanctions against Israel?
Thanks very much, Noel, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you, to see so many turned out, and I'm humble enough to recognise it's not for me or Owen or Nina, but it is a privilege to be here. I think it was Patrick Morgan, is it Patrick? Yeah, Patrick, thanks for the question. I approach the Middle East, Israel and Palestine with a huge deal of caution. One, because it's very easy from Northern Ireland perspective, and we've seen it over the last number of years, how people from one side or another here seem to associate themselves with one side or another in Palestine and Israel. I don't think that's helpful, and I don't think it does a service to the issues. Your question, in my view, is incredibly unbalanced. And whilst I don't take away one bit from the individual atrocities you've mentioned, there was no mention at all of rocket attacks in Israel. There was no mention at all of the fright and the fear and the threat of death, persecution and annihilation that Israel feels. And I think if you're going to find a suitable solution, if you're going to find a workable solution, then you've got to recognise that it doesn't just cut one way. So that's the way I approach Israel and Palestine. I do believe Israel has a right to exist as a country. I do believe that people on both sides have the ability and should have the ability to live free from the fear of attack. Free from the fear that they will lose their lives simply for existing. So I don't see it as cut and dry. I don't see it as one side being wholly good and the other side
you see it as
wrong.
offering hope to the people of both countries, not hope to the Palestinians.
Absolutely, and I think any solution is going to take recognition of that, not simply from one side, but recognising that there is more than one argument to be had there, that it's been an intractable issue for the last 60 years or more.
And how might you offer that hope?
Well, I know that many have tried, so I'm not going to provide the answer, I suspect, and I'm not sure that many in the Middle East will be listening to what I have to say. But I think if you start from the premise that there has been loss on both sides, that it isn't as easy as the question suggests, and that not only one part of the community suffers, then I think you're on a better road to finding that solution.
Thanks, Gavin. Jeremy, you have said that it's important to talk to everybody in the Middle East.
Yes. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to West Belfast. I'm really pleased to be here, and I hope I can come again in the future. On the issue, I've been 9 times to Palestine and Israel over many, many years. And I know people on all sides of opinion in both Israel and in Palestine. And I was most recently in Gaza, and the sheer levels of destruction in Gaza are quite unbelievable, where people are living amongst rubble, families trying to survive, under siege, and living with supplies coming from the UN, and really no functioning economy whatsoever. People on the West Bank finding themselves under occupation, finding an increase in the number of settlements. There are now 500,000 settlers in the West Bank, and the development of the wall around the West Bank means that many farmers lose access to their land, and the levels of anger are quite palpable and quite unbelievable. When I was last in Gaza, during the time I was there was a house demolished by an F-16 jet. I don't know why, I don't know what the purpose for it was. All I know is, during the night, an F-16 jet came in, destroyed that house, killed all the members of the family except 2 that were outside the building at the time. And I went into the building the next day, and the remaining edge of the building, the clock had stopped at the point where the bomb landed. Horrific and awful. Reason? I know not. But what I do know is that there has to be some kind of peace process. And that peace process has to be strong, robust and inclusive. The European Union and Israel have a trade agreement, and that trade agreement includes a human rights clause. That human rights clause is being breached. It's being breached where children are in prison. It's being breached by the occupation. It's being breached by the imprisonment of elected parliamentarians from Gaza and from the West Bank. And I think consequences should follow from that. Therefore, there is already some restriction, very limited restriction, on arms purchases and arms supplies. I think the boycott campaign, divestment campaign, is part and parcel of a legal process that has to be adopted. I've met people from all sides in this, and there's an example here in Northern Ireland. A peace process came about here because there was recognition of the traditions of all communities, and that peace process, uneven, difficult, complicated, problematic, but still there and in action. I think there has to be that same process involving all sides. That's why I've met people with whom I do not share many of their social values, but I do recognise the political support that they have, and I think one has to do that.
And what consequences, Jeremy, for the people who are firing rockets into Israel and wouldn't care how many they killed if they did kill more?
Well, a ceasefire was agreed at the end of Operation Protective Edge. That ceasefire came about because of proximity talks that were held in Egypt. That surely is a starting point. The British Parliament voted for the recognition of Palestine on a non-binding motion. Most European parliaments have done the same. Surely there has to be recognition of the rights of Palestinian people, but also recognise that there are people in Israel who, yes, do support the occupation and do support the continued bombardment of Gaza. But there are also very large numbers of people in Israel, 10,000, who turned out on demonstrations opposing the bombing and want to live in peace with their neighbours.
That's where the hope lies?
The hope lies, I think, in Israel recognising it's got to live within the 1967 borders. The hope lies in the recognition of Palestine will lead us forward on this. The hope lies in the liberation of people to lead their own lives. I've sorry to go on so long, but let's conclude with this thought. I have spent a lot of time in Gaza and the West Bank talking to young people. It might surprise you to know the highest level of graduates anywhere in the world are in Palestine. You have a very well-educated population. The education system, primarily UN, but others as well, is actually very good. Think of the hopelessness of living under siege, can't work, can't travel, can't do anything other than vicariously see the rest of the world through a computer or a TV screen. Those young people deserve hope and deserve opportunity. People denied hope and opportunity end up in often very, very bad places. It's up to the rest of the world to recognise that you've got to encourage them back to the negotiating table, and I believe that sanctions against Israel because of its breach of the trade agreement are the appropriate way of promoting that peace process, and that's what my view is.
Yes. Gavin said it wasn't. It didn't cut one way, but you could say David and Goliath didn't exactly cut just one way either. But that's about the best. Yes, pretty much everything he said, basically.
I agree with everything he said.
I think I'll be saying that a lot tonight.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Can I just
Disagree with you.
at your peril. I'm delighted to be sitting. Can you all see that I'm to the left of Jeremy Corbyn?
I would not many could say that. Right,
Unfortunately, of course, Nuala is to Jeremy's right from the point of view of the audience, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah, but we go.
To answer Patrick's question, one of the things, when many of us have the privilege of meeting activists from Palestine, they tell us that people in this city and people right across Ireland are already giving them hope. And what I'd say to everybody here, and you know this from your own experience, every time you mobilise in this community, every time you protest White Line out on the Falls Randy Town Road, every time you organise lobbying campaigns or you take a decision to boycott in your own life, you are giving people in Gaza and the West Bank hope. And that's not me saying it, that is what they tell us. And in fact, one of the things they say again and again is how remarkable the level of solidarity from people in Ireland is. Often not matched, unfortunately, by the actions of the government in Dublin, particularly, as Jeremy pointed out, in relation to the EU-Israel trade agreements. So what I'd say is, first of all, we need to keep doing what we're doing, and we need to do more of it, particularly to force our governments at the EU level to take the action that's required. The one thing I suppose I'll disagree with Gareth is this, and Nuala put it right, this isn't a David and Goliath battle. And that's why boycott and divestment is so important. Because when you have a conflict...
you mean it is a David and Goliath?
It absolutely is a David and Goliath battle. Apologies. Is that... This is the consequence of nerves in such a big crowd. Hopefully I'll settle after a while. But this is why this campaign is so important. Because for a group of people who have so few international allies among the powerful, what we need to ensure is the mass of ordinary people use every bit of power we have to support them in their struggle for something very basic. The right to live, the right to work, the right to control their own destiny. And I have to say, for all of those people involved in that boycott and divestment campaign, they deserve our support, encouragement, and we need to keep that campaign up until it achieves its objectives.
And what do you say to the people who fire the rockets into Israel?
I think they should stop. But I also think that if you're serious about a peace process, then we need to see genuine dialogue around the table. And I think the difficulty for people, for example, living in the appalling conditions of the Gaza Strip, is not only is there no peace process, but they're faced with an Israeli government that every single day is further undermining the most basic human conditions and basic human dignity. So if you want rockets from Gaza to stop, there's a very simple response. Stop the actions of the Israeli government in terms of their treatment of Palestinians, their expansion of settlements, and get them around the table to talk. That's the best way to stop violence
and
from any
recognise
side
the right of
in the Middle
Israel
East.
to exist?
I have absolutely no difficulty. No difficulty
Through the
with
chair,
that.
please. Through the chair, please. Through the chair, please, Blair.
No difficulty with that at all, but our friend here is absolutely right. Israel exists. Israel is recognised by all of the powerful elites across the world. And what we are saying as ordinary citizens is all we want is the right for Palestine to exist and for the Palestinian people to live in peace and security and human dignity.
Gavin,
it's a very basic demand.
As 1 against 3 here, I'm going to give you what's your response to what you've heard?
I guess the latter part of Patrick's question was about boycott, and it seems to have Jeremy's described it as a legitimate form of protest against Israel. Owen is delighted that so many people in Palestine are encouraged by the solidarity shown by people here in Belfast and across Ireland. I can assure you that not one thing is achieved for the people of Palestine when those in solidarity go into Castlecourt and turn over a cosmetic stand because the products happen to have ingredients from the Dead Sea. Nothing is achieved from that at all. How many people here have iPhones? How many people here have iPhones? I suspect the vast majority of people in this room have iPhones filled with components made in Israel.
Throw them in a heap on the floor.
If you have a family member, you yourself are experiencing treatment at the moment for cancer, you will find that that drug that yourself or your family member may have been taken has been developed in Israel. So these boycotts have effects. And if you think that it is sensible to turn your nose on cancer treatment, to turn your nose on high-tech ophthalmic care, to turn off your iPhones, you will achieve nothing. You will achieve nothing, you will damage those around you, and you will not advance the cause of Palestine one bit.